There we go. I saw Go Oilers. Okay. So Dan, you should already be a lot kind of hard here. I thought I already did it for you. Check, and then I'll do this one. I have no idea what that was, but I missed you guys did. So I would chit chat with you, and I'll do that tomorrow. But we do have, I know there are lots of hockey fans out there, and I love hockey, and I actually am a Blackhawks fan. But baseball has started up, just letting you know. So with that, I'm going to go back to who I know who probably the fake one is. So let's start with, if I can go all the way back to, we're going to do 5, no, we're going to go 8, 5, 6, 7. Sound good? All right, let's go to 8. And I hope you appreciated my nice little picture there. So I think with this, and you're going to see as we go through these problems, they all have a common factor. In other words, sorry, I know this is really noisy. They all have a common equation. And what is that common equation? Energy equation, Super Bernoulli's, de Grazia's, whatever that equation is. And so for this one, and after I put this nice little picture up and then the picture lying down, I realized that it would probably, if I drew it more like a diagram, it would make it a lot easier for people. So basically, this is what's happening here. So you have a water tower and you have the sand pipe. And basically the 25 meters is from the top of where the water is. So we're going to say that the water kind of stops right here, and that's 25 meters. So let's take a look at this. And we start with the energy equation, which is in so many different forms. You kind of have to decide which the easiest one is. And so here, if we start and we look at this, and we call this 1, which is kind of the top of the water tower, right? So let's call that 1, and let's call that 2. Did my annotation stop? Can you not see? Can you see it now? Good. If you guys keep having these names, I am so hungry. I'm going to cut this short. All right, so what can we say? And we're going back to Bernoulli's about 1 and 2. And maybe it would help if I wrote out the whole Bernoulli's. What can we say at 1 and 2? Okay, so P2 is atmospheric. So we know that P2 is equal to 0. What? B1 is equal to 0, absolutely. else that we know is 0. And this is where I should have been more specific, and absolutely V2 is 0. But here, when you have a water tower here, this is considered, and again, I should have done a better picture. It really looks more like this. So what can you say about the pressure that's up there? Yeah. So P1 is also equal to 0. So what that does is it definitely makes our equation a lot easier. Why is P? Okay, so really when you have a water tank, and I was trying to be cute and I probably shouldn't have been, it's really more like a reservoir here. And so it's atmospheric inside of there. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So we have that. And now let's go back to what our equation is. And again, it's sort of, and I put it everywhere else but here. It's in there. It's that super Bernoulli equation. So let's go back to this and figure out, first of all, we're looking for the flow rate. And second of all, basically, how do we find it? And there are different ways to do this. So on our left-hand side is equal to our pressure. Now we can say V1 is 0, but we can't say that Z1 is 0. Or actually, no, we can't, because this is 1 up here. So what do we know about Z1? What is that going to be equal to? Yeah, that's equal to 25 meters. So that's everything that's on the left-hand side, right? Let's look at the right-hand side. Okay, is the velocity 0 here? No, in fact, since we are looking for the flow rate, we have a velocity term, and we can call that V2, all right? What did we say about Z2? Yeah, that's equal to 0. So Z2 is equal to 0. But what we have in there is that we have head loss terms. So we have to figure out what those head loss terms are. So, and then start looking for my notes here. We have two kinds of head loss, right? We have, and this is how they define it in the book. So we have our major, which is equal to that F L over D V squared over 2. And what velocity? Oh, that's actually a very good question, right? Where other minor losses can be neglected. So that is a good question. So that is not considered a minor head loss. Actually, probably should be. But right here, we're just looking more at the gate valve. So here's our major head loss. And then here's our minor head loss, which is equal to that K from the gate valve times our, again, our V squared over 2. So what's the hard part about this? V squared over 2G. Yes. So what's the difficult part with this problem? we're looking for our Q. So first of all, finding the right K is true, but all you have to do is look it up, because I think I said a fully open gate valve. So there's a table that tells you what all the loss coefficients are, and there's one thing that says gate valves, and one of the gate valves is open versus closed. And you can imagine why it would be different. There'd be different flow patterns. So how are we going to solve? What is it that we're looking for? Right. So we're going to have to make an assumption. And your best bet is to make an assumption that it is the worst possible scenario, which is what? Yeah. And why? It's actually beyond that. Why would you think it is turbulent? What about this problem here? Why do you think that velocity? Yeah, it's that 25, right? Nothing's ever easy. It is that 25 meters. So when you have that much of a height, you can pretty much guess that it is going to be turbulent. Okay, so we're looking for our Q. And in order to get our Q, we need our velocity. So we don't have a velocity. We're going to have to use our super Bernoulli's equation, which is basically that P1 minus P2 equals, and then you have your Z's and you have your head losses. Okay? So we have P1 minus P2, which is what? 0. Exactly. We have our Z1 minus Z2, which is what? 25 meters. The problem is when we look at these different head losses, we need a velocity and we have a friction factor. And that friction factor is a function of both the Reynolds number and our epsilon over d. So can we find our epsilon? Yep, I told you it was cast iron. What's the problem, though, with the Reynolds number? Yeah, we need the velocity. So the way we're going to have to do this, and you're going to do this for every single one of your problems, is, and I'm going to try something, and if it doesn't work, don't worry, I will come back. I'm going to share a different screen with you. New share, homework 11 solution, share screen problem 8. So can you see this Excel sheet? Okay. All right, so this is the Excel sheet that I put together. And notice, so there's our H. Notice this length. This length is, why is it 185? And it's 185 meters. That's what the problem said, but H plus the length of the pipe, okay? So it's not only the horizontal part of the pipe, it's also the standpipe as well. And so this we look up, this we look up, this is what we're given, this is what I calculated, right? And then notice here, right, I guess a Reynolds number based on a velocity. So here, now we're going to go back to our different share here. Share this one. Okay, so what we have to do is guess the velocity. From that velocity, we calculate a Reynolds number. From that Reynolds number, we find a friction factor, and then we put it back in again. And that's where your solver comes in. Basically, what you do, and let me make sure I have, we're going to go back to that. You'll lose me for a second, but I'll be back. That's not what I was looking for. Are we going to use Excel? So there are actually only two problems that we need to use for Excel. If you go back to the book, what it says is if you're looking for a delta P or an L, you can solve directly. If you're looking for a velocity or a Q or a diameter, you have to solve iteratively. And so what that means is that anytime you ask for the diameter, and there are two problems, one problem with the diameter and then this problem with the Q, that means that you have to do an iteration. So again, hold on, we're going to go back to this. So if you look at this, the very top one up here, right? I'm moving this here. So that H is that height that we have. And what I did was I set it up as an equation with the V squared so we could solve for this velocity. So, I don't know if I can do it. Oh, I can't. So here we wrote out, this is our Super Bernoulli's that has been simplified. And then, once I did that, I rewrote it so that we could solve here for the velocity. And then we need to use that velocity in the Reynolds number, and we need to use that Reynolds number in the friction factor. So what we end up doing is, as I said, we guess a velocity, we put it in the Reynolds number, we put it in this for the friction factor, and then we set everything equal to 0 in the solver. So why is P1 equals 0? Basically what we have here is when I did the water tower, again, I was trying to be cute, but really the way the water is, it's like this with atmospheric pressure. Does that make sense? Okay. So one of the things that I'd like to do, and let me go through one of these problems. All right. We may switch around with problems because I want you to see how you use the solver. And I guess this is a good one to look at, problem 5. This is what I'm going to show you. Set what equal to 0. Okay. Is everybody on problem 5 and my Excel sheet? Mhm. Okay, so in problem 5, and again, I hate to keep moving around, but this is the one that I was going to start with, sorry, so that I could show you how to use the solver. So let me go back to problem 5. Hold on, you're going to lose me for a second, but I will be back. Okay, so this is the one with the spray heads and everything like that. But basically what happens is we have this that simplifies to this delta P. All right, that is F times L. So let me write that out. So delta P is going to be equal to F times L times rho times V squared divided by 2E. All right, so what I did for problem 5, the first thing is you want to work in feet because everything is in feet. So here was our delta P, and then I changed it into feet, pounds per feet squared rather than inch squared. And so here was our length, and then I changed our Q to feet per second. And stop me if it's not making sense. Again, I hate to keep going back and forth, but this is really the one that I think will help you. And then I looked up the epsilon. Okay, so if you take a look at the problem statement, it says drawn aluminum tubing. So you go and you look up in your table what that epsilon is. That's good enough. So drawn tubing is the same thing as drawn aluminum tubing. So the table 8.1, is that the one that has all the epsilons in it? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I tried to do was stay away from things that have ranges. All right, so if we look, and I'm going to look up, I have the book here. So I'm going to look up in the table for all these roughness factors. Here it goes. Here's that. Okay. Equivalent roughness for new pipes. So yes, for steel, they have a range. And hopefully I would give you what it was. Cast iron, which is one of the ones I gave you, and galvanized only have one. But that drawn tubing, I should have been very specific that that means aluminum. So yes, it is table 8.1. And one of the things that you have to be really careful about here is you have to make sure that when you put your E here, it's in millimeters. So you have to divide it by 1,000. So that's how I got my epsilon. Actually, I did this with a different one, but don't worry about that. This is just for trying to show you how to do this. So then the next, yes, so use drawn tubing, with, in this case is, oh no, it's 0.0005 feet. Okay, which really should end up being 0. that one I will change. Okay, so now you have your row, and now you have your new. And by the way, why are you going to need that? Yeah, you're going to need that for the to find the Reynolds. We're going to need that. All right. So going back here, there. So what I did was I guessed a diameter. Okay, and once I guessed that diameter, I was able to calculate, and I'm hoping you can see not only what I'm clicking on, but also up here in the formula bar. And so based on that, I was able to take the Q that we were given and change it into a velocity. So epsilon is actually 5 times 10 to the 46. Okay? And with that velocity, I did a Reynolds number. And with that epsilon, I did an E over D. And then note what I did over here, and I don't know if you can see it up here. I used that formula for, I think I said 8.35B to find the friction factor. And so then when I did solver here, what I was able to do, and let me see if I can, let's try this. So here, I use my solver, okay? And what I did was I figured out this particular equation here, but what I said it was FL rho V squared divided by 2D minus delta P equals 0. So let's see what that is. So this is equals F times L times rho times, and remember these V's and things like that are based on our guess. So that's V squared divided by, now this is D divided by 2. So where did I get that? Oh, I raised it up. Thank you. Okay. So where did I get that? I got that from this equation here. And then minus our delta P, which has to be in feet rather than PSI. All right, and then I did enter. All right, that's okay. Whoa, that's not exactly what I was looking at. Now I know that. Let's do this. This is why I did it so. And this. And let's see what we do. All right, I clearly have, oh, thank you. All right, that makes much more sense. All right, so what I did again was I took this right here, and now, let's see, I may have to move this here. Okay, here. And now we're going to go to data. and we're going to go to solve it. What is what value then? Now, what this is, what we're trying to do is we're trying to use solver to find our diameter. And what we've done is we've guessed the diameter, we've put that into every single one of our equations, and now what we're going to do, when we do solver, we're going to say that we want this objective to be equal to 0 by changing, if you notice, changing the diameter. Is that the same? Yes, that's exactly the same. So you can write it any way you want, okay? And so now we just click solve. And what it says is they found a solution, not a great solution, such that the diameter is equal to 0.218. And the reason that's not right is I have a couple of things entered wrong. But note, when we did that, the area changed yes, to solve our equation is entered correctly. What isn't entered correctly is the epsilon. The velocity, the Reynolds number, everything changed based on that. So what is new? That is the kinematic viscosity. So that's anytime you have an iteration, that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to find something like this, rewrite it in terms of something equaling 0. And if you notice here, first we had the friction, which is a function of the diameter, and we had the Reynolds number, which is a function of the diameter, and we have the friction factor that's a function of the Reynolds, etc. So we have to put them all in there. Do we get rid of the velocity? No, we use them. Oh, you mean in terms of the actual equation? Yes. And now let's go back to that problem and actually the rest of the problems. So here, if you take a look, right here, what we did was we got rid of all the velocity components and the height components, because we were able to do that if you say minor losses, elevation changes. And by the way, why were we able in this particular one to get rid of the velocity components? They're in the same height. So for this one, V1 was equal to V2. And so what I want to do, and then I'll come back to that problem, is I want to go back to problem 8. And we're going to have to do the same thing with the velocity. We're going to have to iterate. We're going to have to put it, that actual equation where we've simplified, we're going to have to put it in that simplified fashion. We're going to have to guess a velocity. We're going to take that guessed velocity and put it in the Reynolds number, and actually I think in any part of the equation, and then we're going to use the solver. Okay? And that is only for the case when you have a velocity or a Q, or you have a diameter. And actually, the one I showed you, number 5, with the diameter, is actually harder because the diameter is more of the problem. But what you're really looking at, and I'm going to go back to this, what you're looking at here are these two equations. These are the ones that you're going to use. Okay? And by the way, for this, right, what we want to do when we put it in Excel is we want to solve for the friction factor, which we can do directly. How do we solve for that friction factor using that? Using that, I guess, right-hand side of the equation. Exactly. So basically, we take this minus 1.8 log to the blah, 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 and raise it to the minus 2. And one of the things I was saying earlier, so why assume turbulent? Always assume turbulent. Anytime you have something like some kind of industrial system, a water pipe, spray heads, etc., assume it. Now, when you calculate it, let's say you calculated your velocity or whatever, then you go back and look at your Reynolds number. And if your Reynolds number is laminar, then you can go back and use 64 over the Reynolds number. But it almost always is going to be 30%. Okay? The other thing that I wanted to, yes, so delta P is 65 minus 35, but you have to be really careful because that's 30 PSI, and you have to change that into pounds per foot squared. Okay? Okay. So one of the things that I was telling people before, when I did some of these problems to find that friction factor, the first thing I did in my Excel, I called it F1, and I just called it this divided by 3.7 to the 1.11. And then my F2 was like 6.9 divided by the Reynolds number. And then my F3, etc. And so I did it step by step because you really have to be careful with the parentheses in Excel. So I guess the bottom line is that both 5 and 8 require iteration. So they're going to require you to use solving. So I'm sure there are questions, so go ahead and ask. Or maybe there aren't. Okay. Let me go back. Okay. So let me go back to these. So actually, we don't guess a Reynolds initially. We guess either a diameter or a velocity. And then using that guess one, then we figure out what the Reynolds number is. But when we use solver, everything changes once we get the right number. And so when we use super Bernoulli's, when you say the velocity in the pipe, what do you mean by that? I guess the best thing is when we say the velocity in the pipe, it's the smaller pipe, okay? I guess yes. What do you mean Yeah, exactly. It's a value. You get a value of 0. That's what you do in the solver. And again, yes, the epsilon spreadsheet. So, and again, what you can do is if you go through this and you have questions, I'm going to be obviously in the classes tomorrow as well as in office hours. So I promised, that the next one that we would do is number 6. So let's take a look at it. So we have a corroded galvanized iron pipe. We have an inside diameter. We have a delta T. And the important thing here is how do we draw that? So we have a P1, let's say here, which is 700 kilopascals. And then 6 meters lower, this is 525 kilopascals. So the way the pipe looks is this. And so the question is, how do we know that? Part of it is because you know that the difference in height has to be 6 meters lower. And if you had it at an angle, there's no way you would have the length of the pipe, or you would have the height, but you wouldn't have the length of the pipe unless you flow rate. Okay, and again, we go back to this equation. And what we're looking for is the relative roughness of the pipe. So basically, we're looking for, you could either say this, but I would take this as well. So where do we get that relative roughness? Yes, certainly the head loss from the Moody chart, which is when we are looking for what? From friction, exactly. So what we can do here, right, is we can solve for the head loss, which means that we can find our friction factor. And from the friction factor, we can find epsilon over d. And from that, we can find epsilon, okay? Or what we can do is we can find, which we're going to need, our Reynolds number, as well as our friction factor, and then we can use the Moody chart to find our epsilon. Either way, we're going to use our simplified equation for our super Bernoullis. And by the way, when you look at this, right, you have delta P. What else do you have? You have a delta Z. Exactly. What about the velocity? So to find the pressure drop for the new pipe, absolutely. What would you look up epsilon as? And you're right, the velocity is the same. So you look up galvanized iron, and you'd find what that epsilon was, and then you'd have a different pressure drop. And by the way, do you think that pressure drop would be larger or smaller? So you think if it were clean, the pressure drop would be greater? Okay, so the thing that to think about with pressure drop and to think about the physical part of it, the larger the pressure drop, or I guess the harder it is for the fluid to move from one point to the other, the larger the pressure drop is. So if there's more friction, you're going to have a larger pressure drop because it takes more pressure to have that same flow rate. Does that make sense? Okay. And you know, sometimes we get caught up in the equations and we forget about what's happening physically. Okay, so is everybody happy with number 6? The hardest part about number 6 is realizing that it's wrong like this. Oh, I like this chapter. That's not fun. Everything. I'm sorry. Thank you, Sean. Well, if you don't like the chapter, come up and talk to me, and I'll try and convince you that this is actually a lot of fun. Did you like submerged surfaces? Okay, let me go back to number 4. No, nobody liked that. All right, I'm going to go back to number 4, and in my notes here, and it says that the epsilon. Okay, so because it's a steel pipe, I guess I took this from another table. Oh, do you mean it's actually commercial steel, not riveted steel? Okay. All right. I promised that I would look at number 7 and then, oh, thank you. What material it is. What do you mean? So there is a range of epsilons if you use riveted steel, but if you use commercial steel, there's only one. Do you see that? All right, let's take a look here. Oh, let's do number 7. Anybody interested in that one? Yep. Good. All right, so we have 2 reservoirs, so let's draw them. So here's one reservoir, and here's the other reservoir. And they are connected by 3 iron pipes in series. So, let's see. Sorry. Here. All right. So, first of all, if you're going to connect the pipes, where are you connecting? Where do you think the pipes are going to be in terms of the reservoir? Yeah. So not bottom to top, okay? Because remember, you have this huge reservoir. You're not going to be wanting to dump water into that reservoir. So absolutely, we're going to start from the bottom. But where do you think it's going to go to? Yeah. So it goes from, no, actually it goes from bottom like this. And why do you think it does? What would be the difference if it went from bottom, let's say instead we went to the top? What would be the difference? Less splashing, certainly. Different pressure. No, no, no. We're getting there. Gravity's getting closer. What's the big difference? Getting closer, that delta Z is going to change. Exactly. The biggest difference is if you go from the bottom to bottom versus bottom to top, you're going to have less of a delta Z. And if you have less of a delta Z, you're going to have a lower flow rate. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. And so that's why when in something like this, you would go from bottom to bottom. So when it says that we have this exit flow rate of 0.11 meters cubed, find the difference in elevation between the two reservoirs, and then I give you the dynamic viscosity and the density. Neglect any minor losses at the joints. So here, and I obviously, well, I kind of did it. I kind of increased that. So they're basically saying, don't worry about the contractions or expansions at those joints, because they are expansions, but they're actually very minimal. Okay, so we're going to do our super Bernoullis, and we're going to do it from where to where and what. But remember, we're looking for that delta H. So why would you do it from bottom to bottom? What kind of information do you have there? And by the way, that would be, so that gives us delta H, absolutely. So here's our delta H. Yes, they're open to the atmosphere. So you're starting to get to where I'm looking. So if we did it like that, yeah. What was the question? The question was, where are we going to put number 1 and number 2? So we want 1 and we want 2. That's what we're always looking for when we're using that energy equation. So I have one suggestion that we put 1 here and 2 here. Does it make a difference? That's actually a great question. No, it doesn't make a difference. The only reason you would choose a 1 versus a 2 is that it might be easier. So what would be the easiest thing to do? Top and top. So wouldn't you agree that putting 1 and 2 at the top would give us the same height as if we put 1 and 2 at the bottom? Yes. And why would we want sneaky? And actually, that's one of the things that we were talking about today in office hours. It's just that sort of one little jump that when you realize it, when you try it on the bottom and it doesn't work, then kind of think outside the box. And absolutely, what that means is P1 equals 0, P2 equals 0. P1 equals 0, P2 equals 0. So what are we left with? Our head losses. All right, so all we have are head losses. And what head losses do we have? Oh, and then, exactly. And our delta Z, which we're going to call H. So we certainly have major head losses. And by the way, can we just use the length, the entire length? So why is V2? Because this is a reservoir. And anytime you have a reservoir, So it's much larger than the pipe. It doesn't matter if the pipe's going in or the pipe's going out. And yes, we are doing top to top right now. It's not the exit flow. What we're saying is we're looking at this versus this. We are not looking right here. Obviously, that is not going to be zero. It's absolutely not going to be zero. How are we, by the way, going to find out velocity? Because we are going to need it. Yeah, we're going to find it from Q. So we're going to be able to find all these velocities because that Q is going to stay the same. No, you don't average the diameters or the length. You have to find exactly right. We have to find the head loss for each one of the sections. So basically what we're going to have to do is we're going to find the velocity for each section. And how are we going to find that velocity for each section? Using Q. So that's going to be Q over A. And it's going to change because the area does. And then once we find the velocity for each section, what are we going to find next? Yeah, so then we're going to find the Reynolds number for each section. And we know what the epsilon is and what the diameter is. So then what are we going to find for each section? Earlier, that's exactly right. Then we have to find the friction factor for each section. And by the way, why does that change? It's the same height. The diameter changes, therefore the Reynolds number and the velocity are both changing. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to find that head loss for each section. And this velocity is the one, and remember we're talking about what we were saying before, that velocity is the velocity in each one of these pipes. Okay? Now, are there any, let's see, anything there? Yeah, I always forget that. Why top to top? Why does it make it easy? Okay, let me show you what would happen if we didn't use top to top. And I will check on this to make sure that it's not too G. Okay? Why top to top rather than bottom to bottom? So if we decided instead to do 1 and 2, would V1 be 0? Would V2 be 0? Would P1 be 0? Would P2 be 0? Exactly. So it makes it a lot easier. It's still the same height. And that's one of the things about these energy equations, or what I call super Bernoullis. You can pick the place you want it to be. So what you do is pick the easiest place. And so that's why we went top to top, because we have no idea. We know what the velocities are. At least we know, yeah, we know what the velocities are, but we don't know what the pressure is. All right. So then once we find that, so we have to do section by section because the velocity changes in each section because the diameter changes. So the Q is always going to stay constant, but the velocity changes because diameter changes, so area changes. And if those do, then the Reynolds number changes. and then the friction factor changes. So that's why we, okay, cool beans is good. All right. Now, there's one other sneaky thing in this. I know somebody said that I was. One other sneaky thing. It says neglect between the pipes between the reservoirs. What do we have to take into consideration that we haven't done? Exactly. This and this, and it's actually not called a joint, it's called entrance and exit minor losses. So what do we actually call that when it comes from something big to something small? Yeah, that is. If it goes from something big to something small or something small to something big, and what is that? What kind? You're right, it's a loss coefficient, and it's either, in one case, it's a contraction. In the other case, it's, what's the other word? Expansion, thank you. Okay, you guys spell it just as brilliant as I do. Expansion. All right. So what that means is if we go back to here, what we're going from is something like this, and then we're going something like this. So if you take a look in, and I may have even put it, if you take a look, and I'm going to go back, maybe to put this down, maybe this one. I thought okay. So here, this is one of the expansions. So that's from the bottom into the reservoir. And if you remember, we said that the velocity in the pipe was very, yes, much greater than A1. So what does that mean that this ratio is? 0. So what does that mean that the loss coefficient is going to be? Excellent. No, be careful. Yeah, you're right. You're wrong. So not only are you going to have it with that, but if you take a look, and it's not 1 on the other one, but take a look. If you look at, instead of the expansion, you look at the contraction, and you go that A2 is divided by A1. Now again, you're going to say that that is equal to 0, and you're going to find that case on the top. All right? So you have to be very careful, and when we start reviewing, etc. When you see a reservoir and when you see a pipe, you have to consider an entrance or an exit loss coefficient, and you have to consider that it's going to be 0, which means that that the ratio is going to be 0, and therefore your loss coefficient in this case is 4. Does that make sense? Yes. Can I go have dinner? No, we're going to have 2. I'll go back to that problem. We're going to have 2 there, because here we have this contraction, and here we have this expansion. So we have 2 minor head losses. What they did say was, don't include this and don't include this. Okay? Not our K, I'll come back to you. Our K value, our K value isn't 0. It's our A1 over A2, which is 0. So the ratios go to 0, which means you go here, but for example, here, now your K sub L is 1. Does that make sense? Okay. So now let's go back to somebody that you're welcome that's getting some negative number. Can you go back and ask that again? Because I don't have the full chat up. Number 1, there's a weird error. Okay. So what's the weird error? So what kind of negative number? Sorry again, I'm trying to find. 3, 2, here's mine. All right, so when you solve for epsilon over b, how did you solve for it? So you have to be careful when you say the friction equation. Are you talking about the energy equation and then solving for F? Because remember, no, it's not laminar. In fact, the Reynolds number is not laminar. You use the Howland or whatever. You could do that as well. So there are a couple of ways that you can solve this. The first thing you can do is find the energy equation, but remember that there is a delta P in it. Oh, good for you. Use the Cobra, the roast one. So the one thing you could do is you could use this, knowing that the friction factor is in here, and solve for the friction factor. So that's the first thing you could do. And then once you have the friction factor, you can solve for the Reynolds number. And then once you have the Reynolds number, you can solve for E over D using whichever gross one, either 8.35A or 8.35B. What you should, how do you get, you don't get the Reynolds number from the friction factor. What you do get the Reynolds number from is you have basically, you have the mass flow rate, which you can change into velocity. You have rho, you basically have rho v, you have the diameter, and you have mu. And so from that, you can get the Reynolds number. Yeah, I know. But the thing is, we've been doing all these really complicated problems, and now all of a sudden we're getting sort of an easier one. What do you mean, what is? So there's a power of 1. Where'd you get the 1? Okay, let's go back. Let me see where I put that. All right, I didn't put it there. Did I do it here? No. Did I do it here? No. I know I put it somewhere. There it is. Is this the one you're talking about? Yep. You have to. I think I gave you, but if not, just look it up and look up, and then use the Moody chart. Yes, I use the Moody chart. A number of people did, which it sounds like AK did, use this equation. So why do you have 1? Okay, so if you rewrite this nasty little thing, what you get is that the friction factor is equal to minus 1.8 log of, right, this, blah, blah, blah. And I guess what you did was rewrite it in terms of E over D. And no, you don't use constant. My suggestion here is, for this first one, use the Moody chart. Okay? Solve for the friction factor. You have the Reynolds number. Use that Moody chart. It does seem easier. And for number one, no, you're not supposed to get that. Basically, what's going to happen is you're going to have this, right? It goes like this. So you have a friction factor, you have an epsilon over D, and you have a Reynolds number, and then you have all these things that whatever. And what you're going to end up doing is you're going to find your Reynolds number, you're going to find your friction factor, and you're going to find where the two of them meet. And from that, then you're going to have to follow that line. It doesn't go straight across. It follows whatever this line is to the E over D. Is that what you were doing? Or did you go straight across? What did you get for your epsilon? Way, way, way up. I mean, like, way, way, way up. Orders of magnitude. So I would go back and check that. But it sounds like you're doing it the right way. All right, well, I'm going to call it a night. Hopefully this helps. I will be, so the viscosity in which problem? What were we talking about? Well, nope. Oh, problem one. Okay, so all I would do here, right, is, and I can look up what I use, but I think I just used the, have we looked on E2L? I did give you this test. Okay? You could also look it up. Okay. If you don't have a viscosity and I don't give it to you, assume it's 25 degrees and look it up there. Obviously, in any exam problem, I will absolutely give it to you. All right. So on that note, I'm saying good night. And I will see everybody tomorrow. You're welcome. Always a pleasure.